interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast. The German news agency Transocean said today the broadcast.
Here's another late development, and this news keeps coming in as we're talking here.
What is up, Kryptonians, and welcome to the end of another year, or I guess, okay, this video actually takes place after the new year. I'm actually talking to you from the past right now because this video was supposed to come out in 2021, but instead it's the first few days of 2022 that I'm putting it out. So in this video, I'm going to count down my 10 favorite films of 2021. The usual disclaimers we gotta throw out. This is just my subjective list. My list is not better or worse than anybody else's list out there. In fact, I'm very curious to see what your list is, and I want you guys to tell me what your lists are in the comment section. Before we get started, let's get into some honorable mentions. These are the films that if I was making like a top 20 list, they would be in the top 20. But because I'm not making that, I get to cheat and call them honorable mentions and slide them in the beginning of the video. Raya and the Last Dragon, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Ring, Candyman, Ghostbusters Afterlife, White Tiger, The Last Duel, Cop Shop, No Sudden Move, The Harder They Fall, and Army of the Dead. These are films that I really liked or really loved that I really wanted to squeeze into my top 10, but unfortunately there's only 10 spots and hard decisions have to be made. Also, this is the first year that I'm not calling my top 10 list my Justice League. At this point in the channel's growth, it's time to become a little bit more accessible. So without further ado, obligatory fingers cracked. No idea why I did that. Let's get into my top 10 list for 2021. This is one of those movies that wasn't very loud, but its impact was very noisy, especially for me. Quiet Place Part 2 is a sequel to a movie that I didn't know that I wanted a sequel to, but once I got the sequel, I was just kind of like, holy shit, can they keep making more of these movies? John Krasinski returns to direct, and he once again does a masterful job, just like he did with the first one. The sound design and the performances are the superstars of this movie. See it expand a little bit the world of A Quiet Place, even more so than it did in the first movie. It has excitement, it has tension, it has suspense. It ends a little bit too abruptly for my taste. So many moments during this movie where I was holding my breath. When I think back on some of my best film experiences of 2021, there's no way A Quiet Place Part 2 wasn't gonna make the list somewhere. Coming in at number 9 is a film that came out on Netflix. I saw and reviewed a lot of movies on Netflix back in 2021. There I go again, talking in past tense for a video that was supposed to come out in 2021, but is actually a 2022 video. That weird feeling of being in two different time zones at once. Similar to the weirdness of being in two time zones at once, the weirdness and the wackiness of the Mitchells versus the Machines is something that I could not get out of my mind after watching this film. Like, it's a beautifully animated movie. It's got humor, it's got heart, it's got all the prerequisite things that make a good animated movie. But when I look at the core of this story, it's about a cinephile. It's about a girl who loves cinema, who loves movies, and has a hard time connecting with people as a result of this. As somebody who is obsessed with movies just like she is, this story hit me to my core, and it really made me empathize with her and everything that she was going through in that movie. The movie's funnier than you would think it is. It's more badass than you would think it is. At the end of the day, The Mitchells versus the Machines is probably one of the best animated movies that I saw in all of 2021, and it comes in at number 9 on my list. You hear that sound like a stopwatch or a clock winding down. You hear the tick, 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 boom of it. Okay, I'll admit, that's not one of my strongest jokes, but either way, coming in at number 8, I have Tick, Tick, Boom. Tick, Tick, Boom is a musical, and generally speaking, musicals are not gonna make my top 10 list. I said this in my review for the movie. I'm not a big fan of musicals, so it tells you something. The Tick, Tick, Boom not only made my list, but made number 8. That tells you how highly I thought of this particular musical. Andrew Garfield is so great in this movie. One of his greatest performances, Oscar-worthy, I would even say. Offers some great insight into the life of Jonathan Larson. It communicated his struggles, his strife, his ups and downs musically in a way that I could really connect to. At the end of the day, if you give me a good musical with good music, I'll think it's okay. If you give me a good musical that also has a pretty great story to go along with it, I'll think it's great. And I thought Tick, Tick, Boom was great. Number 7 is a movie I had no idea was going to make my list before I saw it or even after it, but this is one of those movies that the more I sat with it, the more it stayed on my mind. One of those Nicolas Cage movies that hits you in the face and takes no prisoners and does not let you know what you were in for, and after you've seen it, you're like, holy shit, what the hell did I just watch? The movie is a lot more emotional and personal than I would have expected, with some great performances, some great cinematography, some great music as well. It's easy just to say it's about a man trying to get his pig back, and yeah, that's like the main crux of the plot. But if you unwrap that plot, you start unwrapping the characters, and there's a lot more to the story than meets the eye. Similar to how a pig is never happier than when it has a mouthful of slop, I've never been happier to add pig to my top 10 list. And I'm not gonna lie, my number 6 and my number 5 switched places so many times over the last couple weeks, I really wasn't sure up until today that this movie was gonna be 6 and that the other movie was gonna stay in 5. The Spider-Man endgame of Spider-Man movies, and I of course am talking about Spider-Man No Way Home. This is a movie that had a little bit of everything. It had multiverse, it had great action sequences, it had great fan service executed in the right way, it had great respect, love, and admiration for the character of Spider-Man as well as Peter Parker. It celebrated over 20 years worth of Spider-Man on the big screen, and they still hit me with all of the emotion that a movie like this required to tell its story. It's one of the greatest Spider-Man movies of all time. It's one of my favorite comic book films of all time. It surpassed my expectations in almost every way, and it actually made me excited to see the future of the MCU Spider-Man. Going into the movie, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to say that by the end. Somebody asked me what my favorite moment from Spider-Man No Way Home is. I just go, I don't know, pick one. There's like 10 to 15 of those moments. Anytime a movie has that many moments within its runtime, it's destined to make the top 10 list. There's no way I could leave it out. It almost made top 5, but for right now, it slides in at number 6. Speaking of emotional, coming in at number 5, we have one of the most emotional James Bond movies that's ever been made. No Time to Die is an epic and satisfying send-off for Daniel Craig's James Bond. Daniel Craig has been James Bond for almost half the time I've been alive, now that I think about it. To see Daniel Craig go through what he goes through in this movie, to see all of the usual great stuff that you have with Bond, where you have great music, you have incredible action set pieces, you have great performances, you have a villain that's kind of underwhelming, I'm not gonna lie. When you look at how this film had to not only be a great Bond movie, but also just a great movie period, but also it had to pay homage and respect to Bonds from all the other eras, while also being a great send-off for Daniel Craig. I mean, come on, that's a lot of things I had to juggle. I would say that this movie definitely juggled it well. No Time to Die comes in at number 5. Coming in at number 4, we have a global phenomenon. Once again, one of my favorite comic book films of all time. Can you guess what it is? Of course you can tell which movie it is. What other movie would I be talking about if not Black Widow? Okay, I couldn't even really hold that one. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League. It's Zack Snyder's Justice League. It is epic, it is grand, it is huge in scope and scale and size. Mythological storytelling at its absolute best. It has some of my favorite heroes put in some of the greatest scenes and moments that I've ever seen them in on screen. Part of the reason why this movie is special is because of how long it took to make it and because of so many people that doubted that it was gonna happen. The other part of the reason why the movie hits is because the movie just kicks a shit ton of ass. I mean, what do you want me to say? There are different times during this year that Zack Snyder's Justice League was actually number 1 on my list. So that should get you pretty excited for what's coming next. A movie that affected me a lot personally because I have a personal attachment to the story involved. Even if I remove that personal attachment, Judas and the Black Messiah has great things going for it. It has a great cast. It has excellent cinematography and camera work. It has a great soundtrack. Like, that's one of the best soundtracks of the year. It's relevant and affecting themes and storylines that still resonate in our climate, in our society today. My dad and my uncle told me the story of Fred Hampton when I was just a kid, and it stuck with me over the years, and I studied my ass off and learned as much as I could about that situation as possible. Even though I knew what was gonna happen and it still hurt me and it still rocked me to my core emotionally, I'm glad that a film could create this kind of visceral feeling in 2021. A movie that can make you feel, that's always a movie that is worth talking about, worth thinking about, and worth putting on a top 10 list. And number 2 was my number 1 up until about October of this year. The Green Knight is just one of the most immersive experiences that I've ever had watching a movie. There is so much about this movie that just sits with you and it gets under your skin and it resonates with you and it holds on and it never lets you go. And when you get into the multiple interpretations of its story and what the movie is trying to say, it's hard not to be mesmerized by the sheer scope of a dark fantasy movie like this. It captivates you with the mystery, it captivates you with the storytelling, visual storytelling as well. Like, it all kind of coalesces into one of the most unique movie experiences of 2021. This movie, like I said, almost was my number one, but I got kicked off the pedestal at the very end. Got kicked off by Free Guy, of course. What other movie would there be at my number one? Free Guy was the greatest thing that I've seen in 2021. It's one of the greatest movies of the decade, to be honest with you. Ryan Reynolds gives one of the best performances of his career when you look at being immersed in this world of the video game yeah, okay, I can't do it. Thought I could do it. I thought I could pull it off. I thought I could go a few more minutes talking about Free Guy, but the truth is, I do like Free Guy, but it is not my number one movie. You knew what the number one movie was gonna be before I even started this list. Like, you were just counting down the time. You're like, I haven't seen the movie yet. It's definitely gonna be number one. Dune was a transcendent experience for me at the movies. I obviously went to the theaters. I went to the IMAX and Dolby and experienced it that way. And my God, my soul left my body. It's unbelievable. It's incredible. It's amazing. It couldn't have been made better. The musical score, the production design, the performances, the costumes, the makeup, the cinematography, the sound design, the sound mixing, the editing, sensory overload of eargasmic and eye-gasmic proportions. Like, everything that could go into making a movie great, this movie nailed that. Then when you get into why Dune is such a great story and you look at how Denis, who is a huge fan of the source material, adapted a movie like this, as a big fan of the Dune books, I am blown away by what he did. I am blown away by what he and every other creative involved on this project was able to accomplish. Some shit that's pulled off in this movie that feels like it was impossible to do, and yet Denis and his people did it. It's a movie that shouldn't fucking exist. Took me back to when I was a kid and I was going with my dad to the theater to watch Lord of the Rings for the first time. The only real criticism is that it is only half the story. The movie ends and says, hey, we'll see you next time. Luckily, we are getting a next time. The only thing that we can say is that, oh, well, we have to wait for more greatness. Like, yeah, we fucking have to wait for more greatness, but who cares? It's gonna fucking slap anyways. Guarantee you, when we get that other half and we can put this half together, oh, songs will be sung and sex will be had. Give me your list. Tell me which movie had the biggest impression on you. Give me some surprises if you have them. Like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.